This is going to be a time lapse of how I created that particular animation. To start off, I created the pendulum or pendulums as such, and I thought that I'd go with a pentagonal shape, which is why I created a circle with 5 sides. However, I changed that to hexagon later on because I realized that that would be easier to actually animate the flipping of the switches. Remember that the entire process has been sped up to 5 times the original speed, and I did this over a few sessions. So you're seeing a compilation of all the different sections. I've cut out all of the render times, and I have edited out some of the absolute end details, such as how I added in the watermark of the IM Studios in each of the animations. However, now I got the entire thing to act like a pendulum. I created this length of the animation. I duplicated it and also made sure that it was on the other axes. And if I feel like anything is necessary to be stated, I will come back and mention it. Otherwise, I will let there be no voiceover during these regions. Right here, I was trying to figure out what rotation of the camera would allow it to be exactly like the start so that we get a perfectly looping animation, but without having to go an entire round around the pendulums. However, after quite a bit of trial and error, although I felt like it was working perfectly, I realized that no, it's not working, and I just ended up with going around the entire thing once. Even that changed later on because once I added in the switch to make it seem like we're actually rotating and not have the switch seem stable or like non-moving, I had to eventually turn the entire thing twice in the same amount of time. Or no, what I did is I doubled the length of the animation and had a single rotation, which slowed it down to a good enough space such that everything was fine. If you want a step-by-step tutorial, let me know and I'll try and create a step-by-step tutorial as well. So here what was happening is that if the camera was rotating in the same direction of the pendulums, it didn't really look nice. It was looking like it's just going around in a weird way, which is why I had to make sure that the camera rotates opposite to the direction of the pendulums and things like that, which is what caused a few changes down the line. Since I was going to stop editing or animating or creating for this particular day, I realized that in case I forget what I had in mind, I would just write it down in a text document within Blender itself. Although this is meant for Python scripting, which is why the different colors come up when you use certain keywords, I'm just using it as a simple text document to hold my thoughts in so that I don't forget the next day in the morning when I start working on it again. I was also writing down the sequence of which it'll be on and off so that I could create a background music that goes along with it. I wanted to try and create my own original music, but I did not do that towards the end. So I've kept the clip of me trying to do it the first time using a software called LMMS, which is Linux Multimedia Studio. And I haven't used this software in many years, probably around 4 or 5 years I haven't used this. So I was very rusty and forgot how to deal with things. And I also did not record audio, so you can't even hear what I was trying around. But I did try and make something, and it did kind of work. I would say that to me at least it was sounding good. However, I made a very basic mistake, I would say. I don't know, a very beginner mistake, which is that I was assuming that each step is 1 second long, but it wasn't. So when I made like something that sounds good in 2 steps, I don't know what units they actually use here because I am not a music producer, but the 2 units was coming up to be around like 3 point something seconds, and that's why it obviously didn't match the video. And beyond not just matching the video, the bigger problem was that if I tried speeding it up, it wouldn't sound good. So I tried changing it and making something that sounds good in 2 seconds. I spent a lot of time doing that. I cut that entire portion out in this particular video because most of you aren't interested in LMMS, is what I thought. So I kept the first one just to show that, yeah, I did spend a while trying to make something that sounds good and placing in different keys and using different different sounds. But sound instruments, I had drums in the back and everything, but I ended up having to cut it out completely. So right now it was pretty much a waste of an hour and a half trying things out. But I guess that happens, and in fact later on, once I go back to using the software a bit and I get a bit more familiar with it once again, I'll probably update the software as well. Once I do that, I will definitely try and make my own audio to go with the next satisfying video that I make, whatever it may be. LMMS is a pretty powerful tool in case you do want to make music. You have all of the automation features as well. You have various instruments, and the thing is that it's free and you can always test it out, see if you like it. There are a lot of users that create sample packs which have different instruments and sounds that you can use as well and just import them into LMMS. so you can make your own custom music fairly easily, I would say. So it's definitely worth giving a shot in case you're interested. However, yeah, that's when I stopped working on that, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna leave that for now, and we'll just create the animation and start with the texturing for now. So the way I went about creating this entire animation is that I had a collection of all of the base elements. So that means the platform, the floor, the pendulums and the switch, and the lights as well. And then what I did is that particular collection, I just duplicated into different sets of collections and just gave each of them their own materials, so that each collection was like a different scene that had the exact same objects and animation data, just different textures. And then I rendered them out accordingly. So I changed the start frame and end frame accordingly and rendered only that specific collection by switching off the rest of the collections. Right now you'll see that I was doing it in landscape, and in fact I rendered out a few of the stuff in landscape, but then I realized that these types of satisfaction videos are usually used in shorts and reels, and those are going to be vertical. So I changed the aspect ratio and re-rendered everything again. And yeah, so that's also one thing that you should look at. A few things that I noticed is that right now everything looks fine, but once you change the aspect ratio, the pendulums were going out of the frame of the camera, and had I started off like that, I would have made it a bit different, but now I didn't have that time, so I just changed the scaling of the camera such that it still was going out of frame, but I'm like, this is the best that I can do with what I have. So here I'm just creating different textures, and you can see that most of the textures, how I create them, it's a little bit of trial and error. It's mixing. I know what feel I'm going for, and then I just work around to make something that I feel fits. And that's essentially what I did. I think I did each section and stopped. I let it render, and then I worked on the next segment. Although I could have sat and finished all of them and hit render once and for all, but I needed the breaks to do other projects that I'm working on. So I just hit render and stopped for the session. I myself am having to actually sit through this and watch it again while I create this voiceover. I'm just recording whenever I feel like there's something to be added in. However, I'm pretty confident that not many people, or in fact, no one, will actually make it this far itself into the video, and the chances of somebody listening to this section of the video is very, very minuscule. So I think I'm gonna play a game. If by chance anybody does listen to this, comment down your favorite holiday destination, and although I do not have the means to buy you a ticket to that favorite holiday destination, I will create an entire video with that place in mind and make an animation that'll be themed based on your favorite holiday destination. So let's see if anybody does comment that down below. If anybody does, then let's see. I'll pick out, if more than one person does, I will pick out one or two of what I think would work the best and definitely do it. And if not, I won't. And I'm pretty sure that I might not have to. So let's see. I wanted to add something else in the background to make the background a little bit more prominent, which is why I added in these particular shapes. However, I don't think they looked good enough when I was actually rendering it out, and it was too much of work to deal with all of them, so I did not use them in the end. Since I still needed something to be added, I decided that I'll try and make some type of god rays, and obviously instead of using actual light sources, volumetrics, and things like that, or compositing later on, because I didn't want to change compositing for the different animations that I do, I thought I'd just fake the god rays using this particular method. As you can see, I spent a lot of time on this first scene itself, and I realized that if I was to make that many other scenes, I can't be spending this much of time on it. So the rest of them I tried doing much faster, but still making them slightly complex enough such that it works out alright. Also, let me know if next time that I make a time-lapse like this, instead of explaining what I'm doing, because I don't know how useful that is, I think a tutorial would be better for that. Maybe I can tell a story. Something different. Maybe. It's just a thought. Let me know in the comments if at all you do watch this far and hear me asking for that suggestion.
Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side, PCH, country limit. I don't need a guide, follow lights, take me where I wanna visit. Are you alive? Or just breathing? Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side, PCH, country limit. I don't need a guide, follow lights, take me where I wanna visit. Are you alive? Flashing red lights, driving at night, windowless ride, feeling alive. Nothing in sight, forever in flight. Follow those lines, we'll make it this time. Blurry street lights, work as a guide to memories that we're making tonight. Oh yeah, we'll make it tonight. Yeah. I'll do anything that I feel like I wanna do. I'm living life like I got nothing left to prove. No end in sight, just always staying on the move. I'll go all night if that's just what I gotta. Life's too short to care about what you can't afford. Memories are in what you explore, so just don't be ignored. Go ask for more, go ask for more. Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side, PCH, country limit. I don't need a guide, follow lights, take me where I wanna visit. Are you alive? Or just breathing? Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side, PCH, country limit. I don't need a guide, follow lights, take me where I wanna visit. Are you alive? Or just breathing? I'm in a race that everybody's chasing fast. They wanna be that someone on the screen at last. They ain't looking inside for their needs in life. They wanna be liked by everybody in sight. But trust me, being free ain't spotlights. No, it's long nights and it's long fights with yourself all the time to get your mind right. But if you put in the work, you can find the light, alright? I'll do anything that I feel like I wanna do. I'm living life like I got nothing left to prove. No end in sight, just always staying on the move. I'll go all night if that's just what I gotta. Life's too short to care about what you can't afford. Memories are in what you explore, so just don't be ignored. Go ask for more, go ask for more. Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side, PCH, country limit. I don't need a guide, follow lights, take me where I wanna visit. Are you alive? Or just breathing? Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side, PCH, country limit. I don't need a guide, follow lights, take me where I wanna visit. Are you alive? Or just breathing?
If you want to know how I made any of these materials or like what I exactly did, then let me know and I will create tutorials on those specific materials if at all any of them appealed to any of you and you really wanted to know it. So this is when I decided to switch to vertical aspect ratio and re-render everything. Soon after this, I also have a section where I showed how the final video was composed. I thought that I would keep that on the side and keep working on it, but the problem is that since I was using the Blender the video compositor or the video editing section of Blender, there was a problem that I was facing, which is that whatever was there in the sequence is what was getting rendered and not what was there in the layout. I don't know exactly what was causing that or how to fix it. So I decided that once I finished rendering out everything, then I would put it into the video compositor or the video editor and re-render everything at the end. However, since I already showed it once in the video, I did not show that again later on when I put everything. But here itself you'll get an idea of how I placed it with the base video underneath and each of the different sections just placed on top at the right frames. Below that, the sound as well I added in later on, pretty much using the exact same way, just add in a sound clip and place them accordingly. From time to time, I saved the file that I'm working on because genuinely you never know when Blender is going to crash and you're going to have to redo everything. In fact, every single background for each scene I had kept separate so that whenever I want, I can just re-render out maybe in a different aspect ratio or make a few changes and re-render it, and I would just have to change those scene backgrounds. I do not know how, but all of the backgrounds did get deleted, so I honestly don't know what to say about that. They're just gone. So I'm not going to be re-rendering this in any other aspect ratio because I don't want to sit and work with the backgrounds again to make them seem to match with the situation and all of that. But it's alright. I'll be making more of such things from scratch later on as well. And hopefully I'll make sure that they don't get deleted then. So this is how the video editing was done. So I just placed them in the right positions with the entire video at the back. Now the problem was that when I actually went ahead and rendered the next scene, you'll see that it rendered out what was in the video video editing section and not what was in the layout. So that's why I had to remove everything from the video editing as well. And then I didn't re-record when I actually put everything there at the end once everything was ready. Also, while saving the files, it's very necessary to remember that when you render something out from Blender, it's going to render with the start frame and end frame as the name of the file. And if somebody knows how to change that, let me know in the comments. The problem is that if you render something again using the same frames, which you'll see later on, because since I had to do this twice with the same exact animation, the base recording I recorded only once, and I only changed the collections in the second half as well and rendered them out with the same frames. The problem with that is that if you accidentally hit render to a different file that's already saved with the same start to end frames, it's just going to get overwritten and you're going to lose that file altogether. And in fact, that happened to me at some point over here. I tried recovering the previous versions, but it was gone. So I had to re-render the entire thing again. So that'll happen when I do the magma scene. So the thing is that it's very important that right after you render it, change the name to something unique that you won't use again. So right there, I changed all of the names accordingly because I'm going to be starting from 0 again to make the second set of loops. So it was important that I changed the names. Also, I had something else to say, but I think I forgot. I do not know. I will remember it and mention that when I do. My laptop could barely handle this, and every time I made a change, it was like quite a bit of waiting to see what the output actually is. So over here, this is sped up to 5 times the speed, and there's still a small bit of waiting whenever I make a change. Considering the amount of time it was taking for any change to happen, I decided to change from rendered view to look dev. But even look dev didn't help that much. It was still taking quite a lot of time to make any changes. So I ended up disabling the floor so that a bit less has to be rendered. This particular scene was slightly difficult for me to do because I wanted everything to just be holographic, so everything was supposed to be see-through, the floor, the base, the switch, and all of that. But the moment the switch and the floor, or the base, at least the base of the switch, becomes transparent, clearly things weren't lining up that well. So I did end up making them opaque afterwards, and I guess that looked a bit better, but a lot of this is quite a bit of trial and error to figure out what works and what doesn't work. I kept the plane infinitely large in all of my scenes and just added in a mask, a gradient mask, a spherical gradient mask, so that only a portion of the plane is seen. I feel like I did that in most of the situations because as we go further away, all of it just becomes lit up and it looks too strong, which is the exact opposite of what would happen in a situation like this. The further you go, the weaker it should become and the more it should fade into the horizon. So that's why I added this gradient texture. Instead of the gradient texture, I could always have just scaled down the floor. And now that I'm watching this, I am thinking to myself, why in the world did I not do that? Because each of the textures that I had to use, I had to scale up by so much. And you can scale a texture at most to 1000. And there were certain areas where I had to add in another texture after that texture and scale that up as well, because it still wasn't large enough. So I could have just changed the size of the floor in areas where I didn't need it. I do not know why I did this. So yeah, this was the region where I did not save it to, I did not change the frames that I'm working on, and I ended up hitting the render in the previous frames, and that just deleted that entire animation of the magma scene that I had made, this particular one. So I had to re-render this again, and this was probably what took the longest amount of time to render. So that was a very sad thing to do. However, yeah, I skipped out the portion of me re-rendering that because it's just re-rendering it. And then I continued on to make a few more scenes. This was the last scene that I was trying to create. I wanted to make it a nice glass scene. It took a while to get the glass right, and I needed objects to be refracted in the glass for the glass to look like glass, or else you can't really tell whether it's glass or metallic if there isn't too many details in the scene. So I ended up putting gears in for some reason, because I just thought that that felt or looked nice, I guess. Tried to make everything glass. I mean, this particular scene might have looked a bit better using the Cycles render engine, but yeah, even Eevee takes time from my laptop, so I don't think Cycles was even an option for this sort of an animation. The thing is that if my laptop can successfully create things like this, I'm sure anybody can, and that's why I do this completely unedited, just so that all of you get a feel of what it's like to actually be creating this thing. A few things that didn't make logical sense to me over here is that the index of refraction seemed to work more like glass when I made it lesser than 1. But as anybody who's gone to high school science or physics would know, that index of refraction, when you're talking about a solid object with respect to air, would never be lesser than 1, because light cannot travel faster in the object than it is traveling in vacuum or air. The refractive index of air is very, very close to the refractive index of vacuum, which is 1. So air is, I think, 1.003 or something like that, so it's almost the same. So the fact that light would have to go faster in the medium than that doesn't make sense, but for some reason it looked better that way, and since this is not meant to be realistic, I went ahead and just did that. So here I just placed the different gears. I tried to give the gears also a material, and for some reason when I gave the gears any material, they would not be refracted in the glass. So I had to just go with whatever default material is there from Blender, and that was getting refracted in the glass. Again, I have no idea why that was happening, but that is what was happening, so I just went ahead with it. And I guess with that, I rendered out all of the scenes that was necessary. I put them together. I also later on took just the letters of the Ion Academy, used one of the materials that I already used in each scene and just placed it over there, and copied the material, made a few changes so that it's slightly more visible, and then rendered all of them as well. So the text was just a layer on top of the original video. And yeah, I guess that's how I made this particular animation. If there's any of the materials that you'd want a specific tutorial on, maybe that sci-fi floor or the magma or something like that, let me know and I will definitely create more tutorials. It's also a perfect loop, and if you want to know how to make things loop and all of that, I'm sure I have other tutorials where I've done the same thing. I've used different techniques of looping as well. You can check out those tutorials. There's other playlists available on my channel, so do check them out. If you liked the video, try and share it with people so that they can also get inspiration to create things using Blender, and stay creative. That's all for this time.